Hi! In this video, we will be discussing the server browser functionalities in Astera Data Stack. The server browser in Astera can be used to see all the deployments, APIs, and API services that the user has deployed onto Astera's server. Once we have deployed our API flows, we can see the deployments in the server browser. We can select a different view if we click on the Select Deployment View Filter option in the server browser toolbar. Let's select API deployments from the drop-down menu. This will open a new view. Here, we can directly see all our deployments. If we expand a deployment, we can see all the available endpoints under it. When we deploy the API flow, a description is automatically added for each endpoint or API flow. This is with respect to the action performed by the API flow. We can see two entries for each endpoint because each endpoint can be processed synchronously and asynchronously. Synchronously, processed endpoints can be seen with the HTTP method on its own, and asynchronously processed endpoints can be seen with the HTTP method encircled with blue curves. We can see a consolidated view containing only the active endpoints from each deployment using the following option. This will show us a different view. We can see the endpoints in a tree-like or hierarchical structure. Each endpoint is characterized based on its resource. Upon hovering over each endpoint, their request URL can also be seen. If we move back to the API deployment view, we can see some options in the context menu for each deployment. The View Deployment option allows us to view the deployment in the Deployment Manager. The Export as Open API File option will allow us to generate an Open API specification, JSON file, which we can export or save to the desired location, be it local or on a network. This file can be used to import the API collection to any third-party tool for consumption, such as Postman, Insomnia, etc. The Copy Swagger URL option allows us to copy the Swagger URL for deployment. We can use this URL to generate the Swagger definition file for the API collection. Selecting the View Swagger UI option lets us view our API deployments in a Swagger UI. If we select the Delete Deployment option, it will remove the deployment from the server browser. Each deployment can either have a single endpoint or multiple ones. Selecting the Generate Test Flow for All Endpoints option lets us generate test flows for each of the endpoints present within the deployment. Similar to deployment, a context menu is available for each endpoint as well. The Copy URL to Clipboard option allows us to copy the endpoint's request URL to the clipboard. Selecting the Show Runtime Trace option will show the runtime trace for that endpoint. The Deactivate option will deactivate a particular endpoint. If we select the Do Not Require Authentication option, it will disable the authentication required by this endpoint. The Generate Test Flow option lets us generate a test flow for the selected endpoint. In terms of security, Astera Data Stack gives us the ability to define roles and provide resources to each role. The security view in the server browser can be selected from the server browser drop-down menu. Once selected, a new view will appear. Expanding the User and Roles nodes shows us the client's users and the available roles, respectively. We can add new users by right-clicking the User option and selecting Register User from the context menu. New roles can be added by right-clicking on the Roles option and selecting Add New Role from the context menu. We can allocate resources of each role by right-clicking the role and selecting the Edit Role Resources option from the context menu. We must have the API resources enabled for the deployed API to avail the API services. Otherwise, they would not be able to use the deployed APIs. We will only be able to access the resources that have been allocated to our role. To assign a role to a user, we will right-click on the user and select Edit User Roles from the context menu. To assign the role to the user, we will select the specific role and then click the right-facing arrow. Clicking the left-facing arrow after checking a role will remove the user's assigned role. Apart from the deployment view options, the following options are also present on the main menu bar of the server browser. Let's look at what each of these does. The Add Deployment option adds a new deployment. The Remove All Deployments option removes all deployments present on the server browser. Selecting Expand All expands each of the nodes of all the deployments. In the search bar, we can write a name to search for any specific deployment or an endpoint. This concludes the server browser functionalities for API publishing in Astera Data Stack. For more information on Astera Data Stack, please visit our documentation site. Thank you for watching.